So after watching a video from, I think it was Charlie's Car Fix on fixing a odometer on a older Porsche. I've got a 86 911. I am going to attempt to do it myself, and I'll add some videos here to show my progress. Obviously, I've removed this from the car, and the first step is going to be to remove the front bezel. Small tip is this was very difficult to get out by itself. I'd read somewhere else a tip of taking off the clock first and then punching from the back. That worked well for me. So let's see how this goes. The first step is going to be to try to undo the little bezel all the way around to get the front off. So the first thing I'm doing is following Charlie's instructions. It's very hard to see in the video, but this process is quite easy. What happens is this black piece here sort of folds over, and then underneath there's a little bit of metal. And so you just have to go around and work this. I'm not going to film the whole thing, but my early start of this looks like it's not too difficult to get this off. So I'm going to go ahead and continue all the way around, just taking my time as I go. So here's a closer look of basically what you're going to be doing with this. You can see where that point is, where it's sort of folded over, and you're just unfolding that metal all the way around. So I've got about half a way to go now, but that's what it's going to look like as you go. Okay, so I've been working this for about 20 minutes, and now it's about to come off. So this is that sort of metal lip, and here you can see that I've uncrimped all the way around to basically unfold that metal outer cap. And now I should be able to just pull this off since this is already coming off here. So I'll do that now. All right, so I've just pulled this off. This does come off in two pieces. There's the one underneath, and then this is that ring that was just unfolded. So I'll put these off to the side and continue to the next step now. So the thing that surprised me when I got to this step, the glass has been, or the plexi's been removed, and this trim piece needs to come out, and it didn't come out. In the video that I'd watched, it came out right away, and that was a different year. I thought maybe they'd done something differently, but I just gently used a pick and pulled up on the underside, and eventually it did release itself and come out. So that stumped me for a minute, but ultimately that worked and was the way to get this trim piece out. So it does come out. You may have to be gentle and use a pick to get that piece to come out. So next will be to make the marking of where the speedometer is with a mark here. And then remove the screws from the back. Now, I've gone ahead and marked the inside of the case where the speedo needle needs to be. And I've started the steps that Charlie outlined in terms of flipping the needle back and forth and getting past the top point and trying to pull up on it. And doing that back and forth. It's definitely taking me more steps than it did for Charlie in his video, but I'm going through that process now, and I'll show you when I'm able to get that off. Okay, well, I was a little nervous that I was gonna break it, but the instructions did work. It took me maybe 5 minutes of going back and forth to get the needle off, being very gentle. And sure enough, you can see how small and delicate that pin is. So you want to be careful to get it off and also not to mark it as you're doing it. So now I'll unscrew the back and take the internals out. So I thought I'd show something. This was interesting. I was a little nervous that it wouldn't be the same issue that Charlie had reported, but you can see I haven't even pulled this all out yet. And you can see right in here that these teeth on this gear are in fact broken. And that really was the problem. So that's the gear I'm gonna go ahead and replace following Charlie's instructions. So I need to take the rest of the unit out, and I'll show you as I go. Now, one thing that was non-obvious is that the wires inside in my unit are really tight, and it's hard to get additional access. And what I realized is that this screw right here holds in the motor that ultimately gets to this gear, and there's wires in the bottom that are attached to that. So I'm going to remove this screw. That should allow me to pull this motor back and then allow me to get better access to the unit. Okay, so I've removed that screw at the top there that was holding on the motor that drives the worm drive, and that's what that looks like. Okay, so once you remove the 4 screws that are holding on the front, it comes off, and now you get access to the gears. Just gonna follow the steps there in Charlie's video to remove the 3 and take the little clips off and replace the brown one with the new gear that I bought. So I was trying to figure out why Charlie removed this big gear first, since the 3rd one is the only one that you need to replace. But the answer is that this pin doesn't actually come out. And the only way to get the new gear in is to replace them all. How did I get that gear off? Well, because the old gear just crumbles, just like it did in Charlie's video. So just note that those little clips, this one is still here, are a little bit tricky to get off, and they do fly. When I got that top one off, it went across the table, and fortunately I found it. So hopefully I can do better on this next one. But I knew this was going to be tricky, which is why I'm doing this in the house and not in the workshop. I definitely would have lost that little clip in the workshop. So I got the gears off following Charlie's instructions. Was better on the 2nd clip, not losing it. And now I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup. Definitely very sticky from whatever material was on this prior gear. And you can see the just gunk that was all over it. So I'm going to clean these up and start putting the whole unit back together with the new gear, and I'll show you that in a moment. All right, so once I've got the other gears off, I ordered the replacement gear from odometergears.com, same guys that Charlie ordered from, and just putting them back together now. And simple enough, it's going to be the reverse of removal. So the gears are back on now. Honestly, getting these clips is the most dangerous part in my mind, because they do go flying, and I almost lost the 2nd one trying to put this one on. So, but they are on, and the whole system, moves, and I can see it's turning the gears here. And the other thing he said to check for was that the reset would work. Which I'll test that in a second. I don't want to do that one-handed with the video here. And everything's cleaned up, and so I'll continue putting the unit back together. So I've put the top case back on. One thing to be very careful of while you're doing it is that the needle for the speedometer comes through that hole. You want to be very careful because it's kind of an awkward piece to get on. But you can see that the gears are spinning easily. I did test the reset trip button, and that works. So these screws go back on, this one on the top with this plate. And next I'll put on the worm gear and continue with the reverse of the removal. So now again, doing it in reverse, the worm gear is in, and then this was the one screw that I removed. And I can see that if I turn it's a little hard to do with the camera here, but if I turn the worm gear, it does turn the rest of the gears smoothly. So everything still seems good. Now, when I was getting the guts back into the housing, one of the things I didn't realize was how the unit sits. I guess it should have been obvious that there is this bumper on the top with this inset, and that's the way that it sits back in the case, and then you can put the screws in on the back. All right, so I've got the 3 of the screws in here already. You can see the 4th one that I've just got a screw in there, and then I'll be done with putting the back housing together. All right, so I've got the back housing on, put the front plate on. I went ahead and washed my hands because I thought I might be dealing with, dirty hands and didn't want to get that on this front black plate. So I'm gonna put these screws in. You want to be careful when you're dropping this plate in. You can't really hold it around the sides, and you don't want it to hit the pin for the speedometer. So hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. I got lucky, I think. I didn't actually think about that, and just sort of dropped it on there, and fortunately went directly into place. A tiny little detail here that I probably wouldn't have thought of if it weren't for Charlie making a note of it is when you're putting these screws in, you want to have them in the same position. Looks, just tighter. So in this case, both of these are screws are pointing up and down. All right, so now I've got a press fit back on the speedometer needle. And when I'm done, I'm gonna have it point to the mark that I made previously, which is right here. On the inside, not this outer one, but this inner one here is a pencil mark that I made, and I'm going to make sure the speedometer is pointed right at that mark. So I'm just doing the same technique here of going a little bit past each stop and pressing a little bit to, get it worked into the motor. Feels like that's worked in now. And then I'll get it aligned back to that point that I'd made previously. All right, so the speedometer needle's back on. I'll just do another double check of the trip meter, which does in fact work. And now we're gonna work backwards here. This was that outer trim piece, which was a little tricky for me to get off originally. I've got the plexi, which I'll clean with a microfiber cloth, and then get the trim piece back on. All right, so the plexi's in. This is the outer trim piece that goes like this, and then this inner trim piece, and this is the one that we pried off originally off the back. So I'm gonna gently put that one back on and show you that. All right, so the top case is back on, and for me, it was not too hard. I mean, obviously we were able to get it off, and I was just able to rotate it a little bit and sort of twist it and get it on. And so now I don't have that crimping tool that he had, so I'm gonna wrap the screwdriver, wrap a cloth around the screwdriver and sort of gently press in on the backside. So I was gonna use the cloth, but I realized that, well, first it didn't work that well, but also that you're not really gonna be seeing these. And so what I'm gonna be doing is using a screwdriver and sort of tapping down all the way around to get these crimps semi back to the way they were. You won't be seeing this when it's inside, and back in the car, but I wanna crimp this as best I can. Obviously so it doesn't pop off while I'm driving, and to hold it back on there as neatly as possible. Well, I've been trying multiple techniques at this, and what I found is that just sort of holding it in my lap and going to each of these pieces and just kind of hand crimping it, it's going to take a little bit of time, but that's the best approach that I think is going to work for getting all the way around. Obviously, you want to be careful as you do this, but that's going to be my technique. All right, so I can't say that the crimping job that I did was outstanding, but it seems to hold on there well enough. And this will be hidden, of course, when we put it back in the car. So let's go do that and take it for a spin. Hopefully it all works. All right, so I've got the Speedo back in. And one other tip that I learned from somebody else forum was to get that out, was to pull out the clock first. So I'll be putting that back in and taking it for a test drive. So hats off to Charlie. He was the one that had the original post that got this all to work. But hopefully my matching what he did and a couple of the things that I noticed might help you as well.